Okay, I will start with roll call with the trustees. Trustee Bill Withrow.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Meredith Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Linda Handy.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Nikki Gonzalez-Yuen.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Karen Weinstein.
Here.
Trustee Cindy Napolia Bellarise. I see she's connecting to audio, so we'll get back to her. President Bonilla.
Here.
Am here.
Thank you. Oh, okay. And Trustee Napolia Bellarise, I heard her. And President Bonilla, we have a quorum.
Thank you. And so welcome everyone. Thank you for taking precious time out of your day for this August 3rd board retreat. I also want to welcome our facilitator, Dr. Helen Benjamin. But let me go ahead and we looks like we skipped the Pledge of Allegiance. So let me go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I will go ahead and lead that once we have our flag up.
1 second.
There we go.
Oh, thank you all for that. Please rise, and I will begin with Trustee Withrow.
What are we doing?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, I thought you were leading it.
Oh,
Pledge allegiance to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
that
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Fantastic. We're calling this meeting to order, and we will go to public communication. Madam Vice President, do we have any speakers?
Madam President, we do not have our speaker in the attendee list just yet.
Okay, we can come back. We have our agenda. May I give you a couple of minutes to open it? And once you feel comfortable, may I have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. And we can do a roll call on that.
Thank you. Trustee Withrow.
Aye.
Trustee Brown.
Yes.
Trustee Handy.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen.
Yes.
Trustee Weinstein.
Aye.
Trustee Napolia Bellarise.
Yes.
And Trustee Bonilla.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. I will go ahead and turn the meeting over to Dr. Benjamin. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. It's good to see you again. I gave away the fact that I started my career as a teacher by giving you homework.
Yes.
So I hope you had an opportunity to do that, and I hope we have a chance to get to it. So we are going to spend our first 2 hours trying to complete our retreat, and I have a plan, but we'll see if it materializes fully. We're going to start where we left off, and I'm going to put the PowerPoint back up. And if you had a chance to look through it, I took notes as we went along, and the one place I did not have any notes, let's see, for us was on this one area. Let me just go back up for a second. Because what we were doing, we were looking at your scores, and then you came up with suggestions as to how you could improve your scores. So this was the one of the 21 we covered slides where we did not have any responses. So we can do this one quickly on policy responsibilities. I remember that we talked about it, especially this part about the updating the policy, but we didn't come up with any suggestions. So the first one here where you rated yourselves a 3 has to do with understanding your policy role, differentiating your role from that of the CEO's role and that of the college staff, and refraining from micromanaging. The next one was about your policy manual being up to date with relevant policies relevant to the mission and comprehensive and inclusive. And the third was on making decisions using your board policies to make decisions. So you rated yourselves an average of 3 there. So if you could just come up with a couple of recommendations for yourselves as to what you think you can do to increase the scores in this area. And then we'll go down to slide 22, which was where we stopped.
Well, I have a question regarding the policy, because we've been going over this policy regarding, I think it was the board president and vice president brought up 1724, or there was a policy that said that the board is supposed to approve the administrative hires, and there was a interpretation of it that didn't seem to be exactly what the rest of the board remembered, at least when the board members who were there at the time were asked. I think it was Withrow and Linda, regarding what that meant. Linda, do you remember what that policy, what you had said regarding when that was passed? And so, Helen, I just wanted your feedback on what the meaning or interpretation of that policy is, just so that we at least have some discussion and some sort of understanding of during this retreat, because that was something that I think
Okay, so when
bears some.
All right, so when we take a break at 5:30, it's 1724?
Julina, do you remember the name of that policy, the number of that policy that you brought up before?
It is board policy, is it 7100 or 7110? I can look it up for you quickly.
Or maybe Brenda has it, because it was brought up with in a meeting with the chancellor before she resigned.
Do you know the title of it? The name on
It's
it?
7110, I believe. Board policy 7110.
Yeah.
7110, okay.
Because I think that really goes to this issue of our policy role and the trustee role and the CEO role. That was a major sticking point with our last chancellor. So I think it would be worth discussing that in the retreat.
Okay, so in terms though of, in this one, you rated yourselves at a 3, which is not a 5. You're just kind of in the middle. So what are some things you can do? So it sounds like just from this example, you need a common understanding of what your policies mean.
That's what I would say, yes.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? A common interpretation?
Yeah.
Well, the wording, if I could, if I
Yes.
remember the policy, the wording was that the board will approve new hires. And when I brought that up with outside individuals, I said, how can we be put in a role of, in quote, determining who the subordinates of the chancellor are, but yet we hold the chancellor accountable? Number one. Number two, there was an aura throughout our institution that the board felt like everybody worked for them. And that
Okay.
That obviously is not a healthy situation. And what I've been told, right or wrong, whatever, but I've been told by some supposed people that know what they're talking about, that the reason the board approves it is for the financial commitment of resources for the role. It has nothing to do with the personality, whether it's an evaluation of the characteristics that would lead to success, however you want to put it, but that the board is approving the commitment of substantial resources for senior management people.
Okay, so I'm just listening to you and drawing conclusions here. You can tell me if I should take this off. Based on what you said, clearly distinguishing the management role and responsibilities of the board and the CEO.
Yes.
Does anybody object to having that as something you need to do? Okay.
I did want
And
to, I did,
excuse me. We talked the last time too about updating your policies, and I wasn't really clear, and you weren't real clear either on exactly, because you know, I shared a model with you wherein there's a person whose job it is to make sure those policies are on schedule and they go through, and you weren't sure about exactly how that works, and that is really important. So I'm just going to add something here that says something like learn what the process, what the
Well, we used to have Joseph Belansky do that for us, and we would have the policies come up for review like quarterly, and we would have a bunch of them at a time. So we did have a process.
Okay, I'm just gonna just ask you, I'm just gonna put that you receive info on policy approval process. I'm sure you have one. You just need to know what it is as board members. Okay, I'm gonna rush us on down to where we stopped at 22.
Ellen?
Yes, is that Nikki?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
So I think the challenge here is that depending on what policy we're talking about and what point in history we're talking about,
Yes.
different board members have different interest in how we interpret it and whether we enforce it. And so, you know, it's easy to look into the board policy and say, oh, well, let's focus on this. Oh, well, let's reinterpret that. And a lot of it has to do with the substantive outcome. So, you know, if you go back to your previous slide where you were saying, you know, needing to clarify board and management, I think it was when you just put up. I don't know that there's profound disagreement between among trustees about what is a management role and what is a board role. Frankly, I think we probably pretty much agree. And then it's a question of, on a particular thing, what emphasis is going to be played on the policy role versus the implementation role. And there's a gray area there. And I think Trustee Reese has spoken quite eloquently to that grayness at times. And again, so frankly, I don't think that there is a big disagreement on what the role should be. It's in any given moment, how do we interpret that role? And strikes me that that's often just a political distinction that needs to be sort of hashed out on a values basis, and you know, on the basis of data and a kind of clear and ethical discussion based on principles. I think sometimes, you've seen this, I'm sure, the term micromanagement is used in various settings. And in my experience, people are accused of micromanaging when they don't like what is being done. And otherwise it's considered, you know, effective governance or effective oversight. And so that the terms get used and used to almost get weaponized sometimes.
I know,
So,
and I think that's why you need this distinction made. That's why you need a common interpretation, so that when something comes up, you know what you need to do or how you need to address it. You have the CCLC has this matrix that they developed on the roles of management and role of the board. And the fact that even if some of you think you don't need it and some do, that's an indication that you need to at least focus on it, have a discussion so that you can make those distinctions. What I heard, yeah, and I don't want to go into, that's a big thing. And I think that's an area where some districts I go to, you can't even use the M word. micromanaging. They don't even want to hear that word. But it can become confusing for the CEO.
Yes.
And that's the thing, that's where you have to really be sensitive, because you're going to have either one chancellor, or in your case, you're going to have 8. And if you have 8, I would not want to be your chancellor, because it makes you schizophrenic with so many different
Well, who
people.
wants to be a board member in those conditions?
In those conditions, either way, it's really bad. And so that's
Yeah.
why having a common agreement about how you operate in these situations just makes a huge, huge difference. Avoiding it just makes it worse. But you've got to come to some agreement in my mind about it if you're going to function effectively. I think there was another, we're raising hands today, people. I forgot. Was there somebody else who wanted
Thank
to?
you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Handy? Her hand is up.
I'm working with new equipment, so sometimes it's hard for me to find where it is. This is a laptop as opposed to an iPad. I wanted to clarify some things I'd raised while I tried to speak earlier.
Okay.
The board policy that Jelena found, I did research and I checked with other board members and the chancellor who was there at the time. It was not because necessarily of any specific action. This is what we hired someone to go over all of our board policies, and we just ratified them. There wasn't any particular thing going on at the time. That was a language, the way that he rewrote it, determined based on the information that he had on best practices. Now, I've heard, with those comments, I've heard them before on what other people say, but let's get back to specifically what we do. That was the policy, but you can tell that the board wasn't enforcing it, because if they had been, it wouldn't have been lost and found at a time when the board was feeling pushed back. Now, at that time, when all the board policies were being clarified, it was, again, to the word micromanagement was thrown around a lot, and not by the board. The board was often being accused of being micromanaged by management that did not care for what was happening. So I think it is important to have the clarification, but I'm not saying that over the years our boards weren't micromanaging, because they were. I mean, I've been here for a while, and we've had boards almost as crazy as they are now, and involved in everywhere and doing everything and crossing boundaries everywhere. But that had nothing to do at that time with the policy change. But I agree that we absolutely need the policies to be in place so that people can stay in their lane. And if the board is not interfering, or if the board is doing their job, then we don't see words like micromanagement popping up in the FICMAT reports and all. Because at that same time when that policy was changed, that's the same time that we hired Tom Henry. He was not sitting here. We hired Tom Henry. And that was a word he liked to throw around a lot, because Tom Henry had some interesting relationship to Barbara Bino. But anyway, getting back to this, I just wanted to clarify how that policy appeared. But it wasn't us who made that decision. It was a decision made outside. But then again, I think it's very important to have these policies outlined so that that name calling doesn't happen on both sides, and people have clear guidelines as to what their role is.
Okay. All right, moving along now to board leadership, I think is where we are next. And this one, your average was 3. Again, you gave yourselves the highest rating on board members understand that they have no legal or other authority outside regular board business meetings. So you rated yourselves highly there. That's very good. And the rest of them, the lowest rating was in board discussions and relationships reflect a climate of trust and respect. So all of you rated that very, very, very low. So we've got an issue there. The others, you gave yourselves a 2. Board members exhibit integrity and professionalism in fulfilling their role. You don't think you do that. The only person who controls your behavior is you. I'll just say that. you didn't ask me for that, but I'll say that. And then in these other areas, you gave yourselves 3. The board understands and performs well its roles and responsibilities as a governing body. You understand that you express authority only as a unit and support the board president as the public spokesperson for the board. That's a good practice. Board members exhibit integrity and professionalism. Once a vote is taken, all board members uphold the decision of the board. And that, I know that one can be tough because you really wanted this thing, your side didn't quote unquote win. And so, but you've got to uphold the division of the majority. So in this area, what are some things you can do to improve? Some actions you can take? This is really important. I know this one is hard. We want to come back to it. No, we're going to do it now.
I actually, when it would be nice if I can't view on the side what the question is. I see what
sorry.
you're asking us, what actions need to be improved, but I need to be able to see the question.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
no, it may just be me. I am not familiar with this device. So I see things very, very tiny on the side.
Okay, so I have it. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Did that get it?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And you see the one where you're the very lowest, and maybe we should focus on that. You said that your board discussions and relationships do not reflect a climate of trust and respect. So the suggestion there from me as an outsider, that you guys, even you feel that you don't trust and respect each other. So is there anything can be done to improve trust between and among you? What actions can you take individually? What actions can you take as a group to improve trust and respect between and among board members? And this is essential because of what you have to do, the decisions you have to make, the lives, quote unquote, that you have in your hands by the decisions you make. You influence you influence how students are treated and how students feel here and how people feel when they come to work. And so you've got to have that trust and respect between and among yourselves so that you're demonstrating that, first of all, to all the people who work here and are involved in the college, and then so that your decisions can reflect that as well, and you can make really good decisions. So what are some things you think you can do here in board relationship? Yes, Bill, your hand's up.
Yes. Yeah, my feeling is that in this particular category area, that we need more free dialogue. At a board meeting, you don't have that. You don't have that. Board members come in basically with a position. You don't have a whole lot of dialogue as to the background and why you feel the way you feel. If we had more workshops, not unlike this, where we could talk to each other on a basis of trying to understand why somebody has taken a position that they've taken, I think that it would dramatically improve it. For example, and I don't want to sound like this is the only solution, but I feel that when we had trustee committees, that we didn't have the problems that we've got right now.
Other ideas on this really important one here?
We have
Okay,
several.
I'm using the raise a hand function over there. So I was waiting to
be.
be called on.
Okay, Linda.
Okay. I think that the trust is something that starts, but this is something that ends up getting beaten away after a while. I do think that when we had committees, it did allow us to work together for a cause. I worked with different trustees when we were getting our first student health centers and we were getting the reduced rate for the bus passes. It allowed us to meet someone outside of the meeting, outside of the board meeting. But to be honest, I don't think having more board meetings, I think having committee meetings and then having the dialogue inside of the meetings that allow people to understand both sides helps. I mean, at one point, the board, some years ago, the board worked really hard to be a united front. And in doing so, they agreed that if the majority of the board agreed on one area, then we would all agree to disagree and vote unanimously on it. That has changed because, to be honest, the decisions are made by the 4 and the other 3 are not involved in it at all. So if we're going by strict board policies and not having conversations outside and sticking to our protocols, then the discussions happen in the boardroom, not outside of the boardroom. And then when they happen outside of the board, inside of the boardroom, then you have an opportunity to have dialogue. When people are doing their 3, talking to 3 or their, I'm sorry, there's a lot of noise around here. But when they're doing, it's always obvious because decisions and statements come out that could not have happened without prior knowledge. And for those who are not in the majority, don't have that prior knowledge, but they're very clear that everyone else is speaking from a different voice. So that I think it's very important that board protocols actually protect the relationship of the board. It doesn't, I don't think it takes away from it. And I think that when we stuck with that, I mean, we went from a board that when I came in, that was a wild, wild west, to a board that worked hard to agree to disagree for the outside face, to have the discussions inside until we could come to a mutual agreement. And unfortunately, that's been lost in the past couple of years, but it really made a difference that many times, okay, if we didn't agree with it, but we thought it was in the best interest of the district, we would do it. So I think that getting back to following protocols, staying in our lanes really help with the trust. Without that, no.
Other comments on this one?
Dr. Benjamin, I believe Trustee Brown's hand has been up. Trustee Gonzalez UN is in the queue. Trustee Reese is next, and then I see that Trustee Weinstein's hand is up after that. So Trustee Brown?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we have an elephant in the room. We just had a chancellor resign 2 weeks ago. We have not had civility. We haven't had appropriate alignment with behavior and policy. We have had instances or repeatedly where there was a open hostility towards the chancellor and the administration. We've had, and the issues are that, you know, we have FICMAT requirements, we have CBT, collaborative brain trust requirements, to hire administrators to do work that serves the students. In financial aid and Merritt College, we had so many vacancies that the president was doing what I think 3 or 4 jobs at once. You know, we have these issues that I do think are politically driven, but it's not with the students as the key interest. It's not with the students first. You know, when students are not being able to get their financial aid process, when you don't have people in positions that are necessary for meeting students' needs, you're not putting the students first. And you know, when people bring their interests that are not the first students and how to maintain and operate an institution that serves the community, if that's not going to be your key interest, then you have a dysfunction, and you do have the high turnover rate that we've experienced at Peralta. So I think the CBT report that talks about the high turnover rate, the FICMAT report, the open disputes that have occurred, a chancellor resigning, you know, those things are manifestations of a problem that starts with the board, and it's systemic throughout Peralta, and without changing that, without changing that, where people could honestly be the voice of the residents of this service area, we're not going to be able to be the best functioning board or the best institution that we could be.
Okay, I tried to create a couple of recommendations out of what you said, Trustee Brown. Who's next? Brenda?
Trustee Gonzalez-Nguyen.
I think what we just saw is actually a perfect example of the challenges that we have as a board. It's a selective reading of history, and it's difficult to actually, Dr. Benjamin, try to engage in a principled discussion when we can't agree on basic facts. So, the previous trustee implied that somehow since the 2018 election, now everything's gone to hell. And it was all the blame of the current functioning board majority. And I just think that's it's an erroneous interpretation of history and a misstatement of fact. And I'm not going to try to go in and do a blow by blow, here's where we were financially, et cetera, okay?
Yeah,
here's the challenge that I see happen.
Yeah, but give me, when you, in your presentation right now, give us some solutions. What can you do? What can be done?
Well, so I'm trying to get there.
I know, I said within that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I'm trying to get there. And I think that part of what we need to do is actually try to have more data-driven discussions. So, if a charge is leveled in board discussion that certain people don't care about student interests, well, let's actually then be specific. Let's pause and then kind of get into it, because Trustee Brown basically said the reason that we have this problem is that some board members don't care about students. Okay, that's a pretty big, that's impugning the motives of our colleagues in a way that I think is counterfactual. And so that when you make that kind of a charge, it feels very disrespectful. It doesn't feel like as though we're having a discussion that in fact is respectful, that is policy-based, and that isn't personalized. So one, I think to the extent that we have principled discussion that is driven by evidence and data, I think that helps. Secondly, if there is the implication that and I've seen this implication, that some trustees are acting outside of the norms of board policy or the rules of, appropriate governance standards. Well, we have actually a process and a policy for dealing with this very question. If a board member is stepping out of line, we have a practice. Board president is supposed to have a specific discussion with the trustee in mind, find out what's going on, propose solutions, et cetera. We actually do have such a policy. And so I can't tell you, Dr. Benjamin, how many times I have sat through both closed and open sessions and other settings in which my motives have been impugned, or if not mine, some unnamed trustee. And then it becomes, it's very difficult to actually then respond. It's like, well, what is the evidence? What is the data? Can we have a principled discussion as opposed to ad hominem attacks? Can we have can we actually follow board policy? If something is so egregious as to call for board censure, for example, well, we have a policy that should be followed that often is not followed. And in fact, I think has never been followed. So, you know, I think what I'm trying to say is that if we followed board policy regarding disagreement and norms of civility, and those policies were enforced, I think we would do much better. So I think we need to refrain from ad hominem attacks, and I think the leadership of the board at all times needs to be cognizant of making sure ad hominem attacks are not carried out.
Okay, who's next, Brenda?
We have 3 in the queue. We have Trustee Napoli Abella Reese, followed by Trustee Weinstein, and then after that would be Trustee Brown. So I will lower Trustee Napoli Abella Reese's hand.
Thank you. I would say that stating and enforcing ground rules whenever we have conversations, because I think that knowing and reminding everybody what those ground rules are and then enforcing, that's important. Agreeing to disagree with civility, and not just kind of perfunctory or rhetorical civility, but what that actually means, maybe even a conversation of what that actually means. And for me, agreeing to disagree also means that every perspective is an important, valuable perspective, that no other perspective supersedes or is more accurate or more important or more right than another perspective. That is incredibly important. I think that is critical to the agreeing to disagree. And then for me also, just hearing some of the other comments, agreeing to disagree does not mean changing votes to send a unanimous kind of voting front. How I understand a united front to be is a united front is demonstrated through, it's not demonstrated through 7-0, because that doesn't seem like a necessary protocol or process. But a united front to me is once a vote is made, whether you agree or not, you follow that particular vote. But I think agreeing to disagree with civility and kind of talking about what that civility means is really quite important.
Thank you.
Trustee Weinstein?
Thank you. I think those ground rules, which I don't think we usually go over, but I think really simply there's a couple. One is that you raise your hand before you speak. I mean, I know we all sometimes feel excited about saying something, but when somebody just speaks without raising their hand, it really screws up the whole thing, because those people who are raising their hands are having to wait, and it just doesn't seem right. So I recommend that we enforce raising hands, and also that there be a time limit, if we have to, of how much people can speak. I mean, we all want to say a lot, I know that, but still, I think what you'll hear is a few people who speak a lot and a few who don't say very much at all. And I think having a time limit makes it less personal. That doesn't mean that you're supporting one person or the other, but there is a time limit. The other thing is, you know, when you go over FICMAT so many times and CBT, you realize that there are things that we are doing at FICMAT and other things that we're not doing, and we each hold on to those things. So there may be something in FICMAT that says decrease the number of vice chancellors. But you don't hear most people talking about that. What you hear most people talking about is keeping the chancellor on, or any administrator on, for a longer amount of time. I think FICMAT can be utilized by anybody, and there's plenty in there to be utilized. So I think that if we want to go through FICMAT and all the different things again, I would support that, because it's a really important issue. I think since I've been on this board, education, I hate to say it, except for what people are doing outside, we talk very little about education. We have very little information on data. So if you want to know how we're doing from 4 years ago to where we are today, you know, you might have gotten one or two presentations per year or whatever, but not enough data are we actually taking a look at and talking about education and then using the data that we have. And I think that if we spoke more about educational issues, we wouldn't be so picky with each other. I think the pickiness comes from the fact that we are not focusing on education and our students. And so I think we might want to take a look at that. Why it's taken so long for committees to come back and they haven't even come back yet, I have no idea. It continues to be put off. So I think those are the main things. And I think it's important to talk to the issue, not to attacking the person. And I think we've gotten into either attacking the person or attacking the people. And I don't think that's going to get us anywhere. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brown.
Yeah, so let's talk about the data and the students. And I'm going to go over again Merritt College, because when I brought up Merritt College and the fact that we had, I believe, 6 positions vacant there, that didn't seem to get, that didn't seem to be recalled in the conversation that we're having. So I want to get us back to the students, and I want to get us back to the data, and I want to get us back to the point that I made earlier. We had at Merritt College vacancies that were affecting our students, but they were administrative positions. Now, they were affecting our students because they were in financial aid, and they were in areas where students needed to have administrators that could help them with their enrollment and their student services. We had 6 positions that were vacant. We also had a school that wasn't experiencing declining enrollment, and we couldn't get the support to put the class schedule online. We couldn't get the internal support, the IT, the informational support, PIO support over at Merritt College. So we're talking about a situation where we have the data, where we have the evidence, where we have the positions directly impacting students, and that is when the positions came up repeatedly, they were voted down because they were administrative positions. Now, my colleagues feel that there has been an insult or an attack on them, although I called no names and spoke specifically about Merritt College, factual information and data. And I think that is how our conversations digress into not being focused on the institution and the students, but then getting into things that are really not where our minds need to be. Let's look at the facts and the data. We had positions that affected enrollment, that affected processing financial aid, when many of our students need their financial aid in order to pay for their books, their housing, their courses, and they were getting their financial aid late. And so what we really have to remember is that those votes have an impact. You know, when we talk about understanding the role of a trustee and the impact of our votes and the things and the way that we make decisions, it comes down to how does that affect the students? And that's what I mean by student-centered. You know, we have these situations where we get focused on ourselves and what we're thinking and what we believe, but we have to step away from that. And we have to think, what does 7 vacancies do at a college? You know, these are not made up positions. What do 7 vacancies do at a college? They affect your enrollment. They affect your financial aid processing. They affect the way that services are delivered to our student body. That has to be the most important thing.
So Trustee Brown,
Trustee
Brown, I've got to rush you to a recommendation here. So what do you, it sounds as though you are agreeing, and I've heard you say this before, in these discussions, since we've been doing this, about students. You're asking for data as well, right? You're
Well,
supporting.
what I'm saying is that I'm giving the data, and I'm saying that has to be the driving force. We have to say, how does my vote affect students? And I need to make sure that I clarify what I'm saying, because it didn't seem to be heard the first time. I brought up Merritt College because the votes affected students, and the reasoning behind every vote has to be, how does this affect students? And that's my recommendation. As I brought up the first time, all data-driven, calling no names, put students first, and ask how your decisions, your actions, your votes affect students.
Okay, are there other hands raised? Thank you, Trustee Brown.
Yes, there are. Trustee Bonilla?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, my raising hand is not, little icon is not working. And so I want to appreciate all of the comments that were made, because they all resonate with me in very different ways. So yes, students always first. And one of the recommendations that I have is that our leader, the confidence that we have in a CEO and a chancellor is critical for how information comes to the board and how the board makes those recommendations based on, supports those policies and those actions based on a chancellor's recommendation. And so what I'm hearing is, yes, lots of focus on students, lots of focus on board and board interactions, and I think they're all very, very important. But the other component to this is ensuring that the board is in lockstep with the chancellor by identifying our vision, our goals, our priorities, and seeing those through in a way that's accountable with the chancellor, because that is who is bringing forth recommendations. That is who is running the day-to-day operations of your institution. And we really need to ensure that we are defining our own goals, our own priorities as a board, as a unified board, and ensuring that we have a chancellor who is carrying those out.
Any more hands?
Yes, we have Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
So here's another situation where we just don't have agreement on facts, like basic facts.
I'm not going to let us go down this road another further second, because we're getting off. What I need from you, and we've got a pretty good list going here, and I really appreciate the recommendations you're giving. I think if you execute a plan where you do some of the things that you've listed here, that you will improve that score and you'll feel better about, because I probably said this in the last meeting, you don't have to, no, I didn't say this. You don't have to really like anybody on the board. You don't have to like them. I mean, you don't have to play together, do anything after board meetings together or anything like that, but you have to work together. You've got to find a way to do that. And with that score being so low on respect and trust, it means you are not working together well. So these things that you recommended, I'm coming back to you, Nikki, Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan, mean that you could begin maybe to do that, because trust and respect are not developed overnight. And especially after you've lost it, it's hard to regain it. What you have, I mean, you hear people say all the time that it's all about relationships. And you guys have a relationship. You have relationships with each other individually, as a group. You have a relationship. You've evaluated yourselves, and you're saying that those relationships within this setting, with you working as board members together, is not what it needs to be. So let's just, all I want to hear from you now is if you have any more recommendations on how you can improve your relationships so that your leadership of the district is superb. So I'm back to you now.
Well,
yes.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask your suggestion here, because I've said that I think that discussions need to be data-driven and fact-driven, Trustee Brown said that the board held up 7 positions. I literally have no idea what she's talking about here. And so it's like, what do we need to do so that when there is a disagreement on fact, we can go, oh, did that actually happen? And like, here's an instance where it's like, wow, I have really no idea what she's talking about. And so it's very difficult then to come back and say, oh, okay, well, so the board needs to change in this way, so how do we in fact ensure that we're all on the same page in terms of basic facts, basic data, evidence?
Yes, and I'm trying to get you there. So
okay,
what we're doing, what we're doing today, trying to complete, is this self-evaluation to see what you're really good at, areas in which you need to improve. We will develop board goals, and then we're going to leave this meeting, hopefully we'll get through this, with a group of people working with me to get these goals written and these action steps, and you will develop a plan as to how you're going to get there. But everybody has to be willing to cooperate, and everybody has to be willing to make some changes. But this meeting is not designed to work out your differences. It is designed to determine what those are and to lead us to developing a plan. And I think you're well on your way. Okay. So
okay. And
more?
Trustee Brown, if you care to respond in the chat, please, by all means, and we can keep that conversation there and not in the whole thing. Thank you.
Right. And then you don't leave here, talking to others about it or whatever. You and Trustee Brown hopefully could have a discussion about it if the relationship is such that you can do that, or you wait until you're in a meeting where it's formal and it's agendized and you can talk about these things. But there are ways to do it that will have everybody in a good place. Any more suggestions on board leadership and improving that? Because we got the fun one next, conduct of meetings. And I have 2 slides because there were so many aspects here that you had to rate, and your average ended up being a 3. So let's go back up and take a look at those. And I'm hoping, Trustee Handy, you can see these. So you gave yourselves on this first page, the very first one, well, we're back to trust and respect. Board discussions and relationships reflect a climate of trust and respect. This is in your meetings, and you gave yourselves 2 there, average. Board meetings are conducted in an orderly, efficient manner. Now, efficient has to do with time, and I know some of your meetings can go long, and I don't know if you've ever done an analysis where you've had somebody come in and help you go through and see where you could really do things to make your meetings run a little more smoothly. And Trustee Weinstein, you mentioned a couple of your suggestions too had to do with how long people talk, and I'm assuming you're talking about in board meetings, but those are the kinds of things you can implement to be more efficient and in a reasonable amount of time within the published time schedule. So when you go after midnight, 11 o'clock, there's a point at which I think you probably are not as effective as you would be if it were earlier or if you were done. And some boards establish a time. They say, if we haven't done it all by 10 o'clock, we're just stopping. We'll have to continue later or whatever. But there are things you can do to help with that if that's something you want to do. Board members clearly understand how the agenda is developed and have an opportunity to contribute items to the agenda. You gave yourselves a 3 there. I wonder about that one. The board maintains confidentiality of privileged information. You gave yourselves a 3. The board understands and adheres to the Brown Act. I know you've had enough training to understand, but you don't think you're all the way there yet. Board members are disciplined in keeping their comments brief, in refraining from leaving the meeting for individual sidebar chats, and in refraining from posturing and commenting on every item. You rated yourselves low there. You gave yourselves a 2. And then the next one, board members read and review the agenda in advance and consult with the chancellor in advance to ask questions. That's a good time saver if board members do that. Board meetings and study sessions provide for sufficient opportunity to explore key issues. We're doing some of that today. The board manages public comment well so that participation goes beyond the usual internal college stakeholder interests and includes the voices and views of the students, the broader college community, and the general public. You gave yourselves a 3 there. And I want to go back to the one above that, study sessions. You gave yourselves a 2. You raised yourselves low there. And then the last one, board members hold themselves accountable for attendance at business meetings, retreats, commencement, and other major college events. Your average was 3 there. That should have easily been higher, I would think, but let's talk about it. Any responses here? Anything jump out at you where you think you need to have a recommendation?
We have Trustee Handy's hand up.
I think are you ready to write recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So one, I think that we need to adhere to the board policies that have already been established. One of the first ones is 20 minutes for public discussion, public comments. That should not be, that is something that has been ignored pretty much for the past year and a half, and that's how we're getting into these long meetings. The other part is trustees should absolutely call and get their questions asked before the board meeting. That is why with the Brown Act gives us 72 hours before. That is not happening, or if it is happening, it doesn't explain to me why one trustee may hold questions 20, 30 minutes, and not just once, but 2 or 3 times. So I think that if you get your questions done ahead of time, then we're actually just dealing with the issue and not being a didactic lecturing of the employee who is feeling like they're being attacked. So I think that if we have those questions answered before, we don't have to do that. There absolutely needs to be a time limit on comment. And I have watched on my watch sometimes 30 minutes. And as I write to the board president, why is this person going on and on? Then she's saying, oh, well, this is a study session, so that's permissible. Well, what we talked about earlier, data-driven, you want your data, the meetings are there, they're reviewed, you can go back and look at how much time any one person spoke, and it's considerable. So I do like your idea of having a meeting efficiency person. Why is mine, oh, that's yours.
Yeah.
A meeting efficiency person to come and review the tapes and give suggestions of how the meetings could be more efficient. Because I think that when the meetings go on too long, there's no expectation that the public or the community will stay engaged, and that's a disservice to our public as well. So I think that there are very minor changes that would make better outcomes. You know, that used to be before, even in times of Cy Galassa, he called you the day before any meeting to see if there was anything that was giving you any questions or any challenges. I've only had 1 call in 18 months. And that was last board meeting. So I think that staying to established policies really enhance our ability to look professional on the dais. And moving from that creates unnecessary delays and time usage. I really think it does affect it. Yeah.
Is there a board policy on that, on the board member calling each member? A board chair calling each member?
I don't believe it's a, no,
Okay.
It's not a policy.
It was a practice, okay.
Practice, yes.
Are there hands, Brenda?
Yes,
That's a good list, Trustee Hanley.
We have Trustee Gonzalez, you in?
One thing that would help is if we followed board policy about when materials are to the board clerk. I think if you talk to Brenda privately, she'd probably express some amount of frustration at how late materials get in. And so board packets are coming out quite late, sometimes on Saturday for a Tuesday meeting. It's very difficult to, especially for those of us who have multiple obligations, to actually get through extensive materials and then turn around and get questions to the chancellor in advance of meetings. It's very difficult, and I'm not blaming Brenda at all. I think that it's quite difficult to get materials together. So I think that's one thing. I think the question, Cy did used to call people, and the question that always was in my mind is, how are you doing this, Cy, without violating the Brown Act? You're talking to every single board member about the board meeting that's coming up? Okay. So, you know, if we're going to do that, we're going to need to figure out some protocols to avoid Brown Act violations. I'm not opposed to that in the least. And if given enough time to prepare for a meeting in advance, I'm perfectly happy to direct questions in advance to the chancellor, provided that, you know, we get then answers back. Or, I mean, need answers back, just to give them a heads up.
Yeah, typically those go to the board, to the chancellor. And the chancellor answer, and not from the board chair. Yeah.
In any case, so, but we do have a board policy that specifies when material for agenda items is supposed to be submitted. And I would guess that no administrators are complying with that board policy. I would guess that is literally never complied with.
Okay, well, that's a job for the chancellor to make sure they get their things in on time. And one way is not to put them on the agenda if they're late. That's a tough one though, because a lot of that's urgent. Any more, Trustee Gonzalez-Ewing?
No.
Okay, we have next speaker, Brenda.
We have Trustee Weinstein in the queue.
Yes, thank you. I think that it would be helpful to go over how to get your question or get an agenda, what you want on the agenda if you're a board member. Because there's so much that's put on that agenda before you even walk in, that it's hard then when you're asking to put something on agenda, you have to wait until there's enough time for that to happen. But if you look at our agendas, I mean, there's so much on facilities and less on education. And if you ask the chancellor or whoever to do a presentation, I think they feel under the gun to do it very quickly because there's so much more to happen. So I think that there has to be further understanding about agenda setting, how to do it and how to make it work. That's number one. The other thing is that it's not quite that simple to ask a question to the chancellor. I've had now 3 chancellors that I've been with. And I can ask a question to the chancellor and they may say something like, you know, we'll work on it. Okay, well then it doesn't go anywhere. So
I'm sorry, is this related to the agenda? I mean, to meetings?
That's it. No, to call the chancellor before you go to the meeting, correct?
Oh, to ask about an item on the agenda, to get an explanation? Okay.
Right. So then you can ask that question and some chancellors answer it well. Some chancellors say, you know, I'll work on it or whatever. It's not 100% clear that if you're going to get that question answered ahead of time. I mean, hopefully, right? But sometimes.
Yeah. Well, if it's on the agenda, somebody should know. Somebody should know.
What?
I'm just saying that if something is on the agenda, then somebody should have information about it.
No, they do have information, but they may not have total information about it. And so all I'm saying is that when you ask the chancellor ahead of time, or whoever you're asking, the chancellor ahead of time, they may or may not know the answer. So then it becomes harder when you get into the meeting.
I don't even know how to write that as a okay.
Well, maybe.
Okay, I'll okay. I don't know. I'm gonna put ensure. I don't know how this is possible, but anyway, okay. Anything else, Trustee Weinstein?
No, that's it.
Any more hands, Brenda?
No, I don't see. Oh, we have Trustee Withrow.
Yeah, I'd like to second the comment on not getting an answer. However, what it does, looking at it from the standpoint of leadership kind of thing, and where you've got a broad-based group of people that participate in things, it gives them a heads up. In other words,
Yes.
It's not a gotcha. It's not coming in with this thing and all of a sudden gotcha at a board meeting on TV and all that kind of thing. It gives them a heads up that you have a concern and that you'd like some answers on it. If you don't get it, obviously, you're going to ask the question during the board meeting.
Right.
But again, they've been given a heads up.
Anybody else? Okay, good list. It's a good list. Some of this would cut down on your time there. Let's see. So that was that. Ooh, what was that one? What did I miss? Did I miss something? Let's see. Board training. So that's our last category. And you gave yourselves in this one, your high score. Board members participate in trustee professional development activities. I know that, I've seen you guys everywhere, such as workshops and conferences. So you gave yourselves 4 there. You gave yourselves 2s though. New members participate. Do you not have a comprehensive orientation for new board members?
No. No.
You don't?
Could you repeat that?
There,
A new trustee orientation. You gave yourselves 2. I was just asking if you have an orientation.
I don't know, CCLC does it in January, right after the elections.
I know, but each district is supposed to have this is an accreditation requirement, an orientation program for new trustees.
so
There is,
So
but not as
we do
extensive
have,
as- Go ahead.
so we do have an orientation binder that is put together by the board clerk.
Yes.
And there are supposed to be a series of meetings that take place to onboard the trustee.
Right.
And so I can say that that took place to a certain degree with Trustee Weinstein and Trustee Reese that I participated in. It's not as structured as I think it should or could be. So it's definitely something that needs to be strengthened.
If I can add too, we did develop a new trustee orientation handbook as well within the last couple of years.
Okay. I'm surprised you didn't. Anyway, all right. So that's good. You gave yourselves a 2. Board members understand the college participatory governance process, the collective bargaining process, and AB 1725. You gave yourselves a 2. Is that something you need training on? Is that true that you don't understand? This suggests that some of you don't understand these very important things. For your district, and it's critical. Okay,
I'm not sure that it's a question. Dr. Benjamin, I'm not sure if it's a question that we don't understand as opposed to a question of not adhering to, especially the participatory governance process. And so it sounds more like it's about process, not really about understanding.
Okay, because the question asked if you understood it, and 3 of you agreed and 3 of you didn't.
Right.
Okay, we'll go to the next one. The board self-evaluation process helps the board enhance its performance. Most definitely, we're getting it started again, but I understand why you wrote 2 there. That's an average, because I don't think you've been doing it, but you're doing it now. The board measures its accomplishments against board goals. I know why you wrote that. We're doing it now. The board has a process for addressing issues with trustees who are not fulfilling their responsibilities. And this one is different because Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan referred to your board policy, your code of ethics. Probably at the bottom of that code is where it says how you deal with individuals who violate the code of ethics. But this one has to do with trustees who are not fulfilling their responsibilities. Do you know if you have anything on that? You know, not coming to meetings, not participating and all that kind of thing. Do you have something, a process for addressing those issues? It sounds like we need to put in a recommendation that you would develop that. Okay.
I'm sorry, we have a board policy for board duties and responsibilities, but it doesn't quite, it goes back to the other piece that you said, that it doesn't quite address. And I could say, hands down, in the 6 years I've been here, all of our trustees have engaged appropriately as trustees. So it's not come up as an issue.
Okay. All right.
But it's definitely something we need to look at. Mm-hmm.
All right, as I rush us to the second part of the survey, I included a section on accreditation because this is very important and important to you, especially right now. And I've summarized it. We're not going to go through every single one today. The one thing that I did do, I am assuming that you have seen the letter from the accrediting agency about that each of your colleges received in January of this year. And it was in response to your report that was submitted by all 4 of your colleges in response to fiscal monitoring or whatever. And I have this is just a reminder because we're talking about goals for you today. And we're talking about ACCJC. I have taken this excerpt from the letter so you can see it and we can talk about it in a minute. So what that letter says, this isn't everything. The full letter is in your agenda. So they say, after they list after they give a list, that was Richard Wynn, gave a list of things that you didn't do, that the district did not do. This is the finding. That upon consideration of important evidentiary materials, the commission acted to find continued non-compliance and impose probation. The college district is required to submit a subsequent special report due no later than November 1st, 2020, addressing the deficiencies, which will be followed by a fiscal monitoring site visit. The accredited status of the institution continues during the probation period. So you're in a very critical position right now, as I think you already know, but I just wanted to emphasize it here. You're going to definitely have to have a goal around this. And then the second part of that, toward the end, it says, the commission found the college's special report provided insufficient information to verify the degree to which the deficiencies have been resolved, addressed, or corrected. And then they say it is not evident from the special report that the college district has addressed foundational issues which have bearing on its fiscal health. And it includes continued structural deficit, lack of adherence to board policies and administrative procedures, deficiency in reconciliation and financial control issues, key staffing issues, your OPEB obligations, ongoing unaddressed audit findings. In several areas of special report, the college district has responded with corrective intent, but no evidence was provided that corrective actions are being implemented to address the noted deficiencies. The special report lacks the organizational structure, the clarity and specificity of content. So I'm sure you're very concerned about this. And so today is August 3rd, and the report is due November 1st to the commission. And so I think you need to have a really, really strong goal around this as to what your role is going to be in ensuring, first of all, that that report gets done, because they've done it once and it was not sufficient, obviously, as what's indicated here, but also that it's done on time, that it's accurate. And this is gonna, I've never said anything like this to a board before, but if you're gonna micromanage anything, this is what you ought to micromanage, because the future of the college, it appears to me, depends on this report. Are there any comments about this?
Trustee Whitfield?
I'd like to make a comment on it. Obviously, it's very significant. I don't know that we need to micromanage it, but I think we need as a board, looking at it from the what standpoint in the accountability of the administration on what they're doing and how they're doing.
That's what I meant, checking, monthly. You want a detailed report, exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
that's what I meant by
you need
I didn't even get in there and do it. Yeah.
Now, there are a number of these issues, however, that have not occurred in the last couple, 3 years. It's a carryover from many years. The OPEB thing, for example, the retiree healthcare process, right, that was capped back in 2004 because it was so extremely expensive. So they capped it.
Right.
And went out and they sold bonds. What they haven't done, and this is something that, again, hasn't occurred just in the recent months, years, and whatever, but where they have a debt in the bonds that are due, they aren't putting money aside on a periodic basis so that when that date comes forth, they have the funds to pay for it. And that's what the state, that's what the ACCJC, that's what FCMAT, that's what they have heartburn with.
Right.
They've been putting this off, kicking the can down the highway. And getting back again, this is something that we need to focus on from the standpoint of what are we doing in that area, OPEB, but all these other things, they should have been for the last 12 months, for example, but certainly the last 6 months, and definitely for the month of September and October, we need to have every meeting a status on what we've done and how we've done it and how it's being put into not just capping it today, but changing the whole process of the operation so that it doesn't come back up again.
Okay. Other comments on this?
I have a comment, if I may, if there's nobody else in the queue. I'd say that this is the area where we really, I think a lot of questions have been posed in terms of how are we meeting the many different problems that we have in terms of internal controls, in terms of all of the things that have shown up in FCMAT. So I think that we've pressed really hard on that, realizing how serious this is. And I think that has not necessarily been viewed very well by some of the administrators that we've had in the past, but we're doing it because we need to in order to ensure that fiscally we are much more stable. And I think with the OPEB, we're actually in a good way. We are in a much better way than we had been because we were able to have those study sessions, there's a plan, the credit. So I think that we have moved the needle as it relates to that to OPEB, but I think for the many other very serious delineated problems that we've had, we've tried and we have been and we will continue to really press hard on ensuring that there's evidence, there's documentation, there's systemic evaluation, and also that there's a plan that's being enacted. So I think that we are taking, at least for a large part, taking it seriously through action.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, that's just what I wanted to bring your attention. And now we move to the next part, which has to do with the questions that I asked. And I just took those from the standard. And then where the standard had more than one part, I broke it down into several different parts. So you ended up with about 14 in the list. And of the 14, you rated only 2 as being in compliance. And what I did with this rating scale, I said met, partially met, and not met. Well, I was being a little, well, I don't know, generous, I guess, because the commission doesn't give you the opportunity to say you partially meet something. Either you meet it or you don't. And the only 2 on which all of you agreed you met were the 2 that I have listed here, that you publish your bylaws and policies specifying the size of the board, structure, and et cetera. And then the other where you gave yourselves 100%, where you said you met it, that board members have no employment, family, ownership, or other personal financial interest in the institution. And for all of those others, you said you did not meet them. And so we can't do it in this meeting, but it can come out in the goals that you're going to need to go put the district in a position, or yourselves as a board in a position where you meet every single one of these, where you can say we fully meet it. And number 2, where it says the governing board acts as a collective entity. Once the board reaches a decision, all board members act in support of the decision. 40% said, no, we don't meet that. And I don't want to go through each one because we don't have the time, but I just wanted to point that out, those out to you. But this is just really important and has an impact again on how you work as a group. I think some of it you're not sure of, or maybe you got that one. That was 100% one. And that when we've talked about most of these already, but here, to ensure the institution is accomplishing its goals for student success, the governing board regularly reviews key indicators of student learning and achievement and institutional plans, and you do some of that. So anyway, that's the accreditation piece, which in another meeting, as we work it out in the goals, you can go through separately. So now we move to the development of your goals. And what I did, you've got to have a strategic plan. Your district strategic plan was developed, the one you're using in 2015. I just included those goals here. And then one of the questions in your survey had to do with what new goals you would recommend. And so here's the list you came up with. And I want you to just kind of keep this in your head. Fiduciary oversight, learn more about student services, enrollment management, bring back committees. That's kind of been a little theme. Increase enrollment by 20%, work better with each other, fewer students per counselor. So that's what you gave as recommended goals. So now we're going to get to the fun part. What I've done on this slide is to list all of those major areas we just went over, the ones where you evaluated yourselves: mission planning, policy responsibilities, board training, conduct of meetings, board leadership and relations, board CEO relationship, community relations and advocacy, district climate, educational quality and student success, financial responsibility, enrollment management, human resources and staff relations, accreditation. I added COVID-19 because you're doing that now, diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice. Now, these are like the headlines, the big, broad areas in which you could have goals. I want you to just look at this list, and my recommendation is that you have no more than 5 goals. But you may end up with more than that. But what I want you to do right now, and we have a break in 2 minutes, is to look at this list. And if you have other things you want to add, we can do that when I finish giving the instructions. And pick out the 5 areas in which you think the board should have goals. 5 from this list of maybe 15 or so. Now, are there other broad areas you think we should include here? So if not, write your 5, and we'll do a roll call on this to get your 5, and we're going to see what everybody does and see which 5 or 6 get the highest votes, and we'll go from there. So choose your 5, come back at 7:40. It's 7:40 for me, 5:40 for you, and we'll start back up. Is that okay?
Sure.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, it's 7:40 and we're ready to go. So Brenda, if you call the roll and I'll do the count.
Thank you. Trustee Bill Withrow,
Number 1, student success, educational quality. Number 2, enrollment management and community responsibilities. Number 3, community relations and advocacy. 4, accreditation. 5, mission planning, assessing the what, and defining goals to the chancellor.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Trustee Brown,
Yeah, let's see. I would put the closest thing to student services, the retention, would be the enrollment management, because it also looks at how students are moving through, whether or not they're meeting their educational goals. Is that right, Helen? Because that's what I
That
understand.
would be, yes. Yeah, or
Okay.
it could be educational quality and student success, but enrollment management, that's fine.
Well, then I'd put the educational quality and student success first, and then
Okay.
the enrollment management second.
Yes.
And then I would put the let's see, our financial responsibility third, and then our human resources and staff relations, so that our top 5 are our students, our employees, and our fiscal condition, fiscal health.
Okay.
And then I would put diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social justice, because given that we have majority minority students, if we're doing the educational quality and student success, we're actually doing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice.
Okay.
So we're up to 6, right?
5 was what you were supposed to have. How many did you give me?
I
Did
gave
you
you
do
my
6?
5.
Was that
I
5?
could do.
That was
Yeah, I
5.
wanted to make sure that we had the educational quality, the
Right.
enrollment management, financial responsibility, human resources, and then our diversity, equity, inclusion, because that would be the sort of the thing that we wrap the community in. Those ones.
Got it. Thank you,
All right.
ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Trustee Handy,
Mine are not necessarily in that order. What the things that I found to be most important, community, okay, I can't see it because I have something else that I don't want to close right now.
Okay, community relations and advocacy.
And advocacy, I think, are absolutely important. When we do that, we get students in, we bring in our community. We're doing the job that we're here for. We are community colleges. I think that's most important. District climate, I think we've been talking about this forever. The state chancellor's talked about it in his call for action. We have asked for it because there seems to be a disengagement from the realities of how our students feel about what's going on in our classrooms and what we're willing to deal with. And a climate survey is data. You keep talking about data. It will be data driven. If a student tells you that a faculty member is racist toward them, towards females, and asking them to anglicize their names, we would have caught this 2 years ago. Or we could have put an action toward it 4 years ago when 2014, when it first came up. Educational quality and student success, I think, are absolutely important. We need to really strengthen our evaluation process to insist that it is absolutely happening, and then take it to the next step. If faculty members need to be on a success plan or looking at an improvement plan that will benefit that faculty member and the student and retention in the classroom, that we need to be doing that. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, absolutely imperative. And yet, what we have is check the box. We don't have any of these things happening. With 209, where they're pushing, possibly we'll be able to finally hire people who are representative of the populations that we serve. But until then, we are not doing a good job. And then last but not least, and I said, I don't have it in any specific order. Accreditation. One of the serious things that, one of the most egregious things that I felt happen on the part of the board is that the night that we found out that we were all cleared from accreditation, they voted to not fund the salary of the person who had brought us to that point. We were paying her, I believe, $25,000 for her assistance. After that, it all went right back to where it was. And then she was brought back at fully salaried, I believe at like $125,000. We argued with the board, you can go back and look at it, but you know, it was penny wise and pound foolish. Accreditation is the hand that we fan with. And we must make sure that our colleges are all on the same page. We had faculty coming in and complaining about the salary and said, we can do it, we can do it. And my thought was, yeah, and how is that working for us? Because they had been doing it, and that's why we were continually on watch. Not that they weren't capable of doing it, it's just that it's a specific uniform process that has to be done through all 4 campuses, and that was not happening. They were all over the place, and it wasn't able to really articulate the successes of our campuses. So having someone who uniformly takes us all through those processes are imperative. So those are my 5. Thanks.
Thank you.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
Thank you. I think I would start with the educational quality and student success as the top priority. I think that's just that's the mission. I think I then put in HR and staff relations. I think if you can't figure out how to tap into the resources that you have, the human resources in your district, and improve morale, then nothing else is going to happen. But if you do that, well, then you've got the primary tools to do the first thing. I think the financial responsibility is absolutely critical, including budgeting and including making sure the budgeting processes are functioning appropriately. The sound use, the efficient use of fiscal resources in a very wealthy region, I think are critical. We have big bond, we have big parcel tax. We should be able to do this. I think then diversity, I was then looking at enrollment management, which is critical, but I put diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice right in front of that, because I think if you take care of these other 4 things, then enrollment management really should take care of itself, which is, another kind of driving engine. If you're not doing enrollment management, if you're not doing, then you can't do educational quality and student success. Like, well, with whom are you doing it if you haven't attracted appropriate students? It, in some ways, kind of picking these 5 out and saying, oh, let's raise these up. It's a useful exercise, but of course, the universe of all these things is connected. And so it's kind of challenging to say, oh, well, district climate, that's not, high up, or community relations, that's not high up. They're all interconnected, and sometimes it's just what language you use to talk about it. That'd be my list. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Weinstein.
Okay, thank you. I actually would put COVID-19 first because we got to face it, and it's going to have an impact on everything that we do. And so I think we have to figure out what we're doing there. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 is accreditation, because if our accreditation doesn't work, our colleges won't be here. So I think that accreditation is number 2 for me. Number 3 is educational quality and student success. I was going to put enrollment management, but we've had enrollment management presentations. They've been good, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they're helping us in the way we might want to be helped. So I think that the educational quality and student services might touch upon that as well. Fiscal responsibility, financial responsibility, and diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice. Try to, yeah, that's it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Napoli Bella-Reese?
Yes, so my enumerated group of items are number one, educational quality and success. But I also have that wrapped around DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's all kind of bundled together as my number one. Number two, financial responsibility, because if we are financially upside down, everything else we do will also be financially upside down. Number three, accreditation, and within or subsumed within accreditation will be mission and planning, enrollment and management, educational quality. So all of that, I believe, is under accreditation. Number four, the district climate. Obviously, that's incredibly important at all tiers, very broad-based. And number five, COVID-19.
Okay.
Or 2021.
Thank you. Trustee Bonilla?
Yes, I will go quickly. Accreditation, COVID-19, educational quality and student success, diversity, inclusion, and I was so sad to see everyone left out board CEO relations. But you know what's on my mind.
Okay, is that
And
everybody
I think
now?
that was all five.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Yes.
And Dr. Benjamin, if I can just remind you, we do have one person in the queue for the public speaker.
Okay, as soon as we recap.
Okay.
All right, so the top vote getter here, and thank goodness, because this is the business we're in, right? Is educational quality and student success. And then we have diversity, equity, inclusion, oops. And then it looks like financial responsibility. Nope, accreditation is next. And finances. COVID. Then let's see, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have what? Enrollment management, community relations and advocacy, and district climate tying, right? Is somebody checking me?
Yeah.
Okay. And as you were astutely pointing out, some of these can be combined. And then mission planning. No, oops, sorry. Human resources and staff relations. All right, so number one would be educational quality, DEI, social justice, financial responsibility would be accreditation, the third one, financial responsibility, fourth. And we have 3 tied for 5 for the 5th place. And then mission planning and board CEO relationship, each getting 1 each. So I think this can be done in such a way that all of those could be incorporated into your goals in some way. So my recommendation, and the trustee Bonilla and I talked about this, is that we don't have time to write these out tonight, but if she would appoint, or whatever way she wants to do it, a group of people up to 3 to work with me in a phone meeting or in a Zoom meeting, so we can fashion these into a draft set of goals for you to look at your next meeting. Of course, we'll send them to you in advance of the meeting. But if that works, so I'm turning it over to you, Trustee Bonilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. So my suggestion would be that we create a ad hoc committee specifically to work with Dr. Benjamin. And that would be the board officers plus one other trustee to move forward and work with her prior to our next board meeting in September. And so I'm willing to take suggestions, or if there's someone who is ready to raise their hand and be part of the ad hoc committee for this board institutional priorities activities, please raise your hand.
Trustee Brown has her hand raised. Trustee Brown?
The board president asked for us to raise our hands if we wanted to
If you were
work
interested.
on board goals.
That's great.
Yes, on these institutional priorities, yes. And so I have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I spoke out of turn.
So Trustee Brown, I have you and Trustee Withrow. Did I see your hand raised as well?
Yes.
And so for an ad hoc committee, I believe we can go up to 3.
That's
correct.
And maybe that's correct, right?
Yeah.
Is there, would you like to give us some more time commitment framing for this, Dr. Benjamin, so that we can determine kind of.
Well, what I'll do, I'll just get with Brenda and have her poll the folks on the ad hoc committee, and we'll just set up a time and go to work. With the time that works for everybody. Is that what you were asking me?
Yeah.
And we could do it in about 90 minutes, in one 90-minute meeting.
Okay. Okay. Is there a preference? I know that I don't know that we need to take a vote for an ad hoc, just a level of interest. So I have Trustee Brown and I have Trustee Withrow.
I support.
And I'm open.
I support Trustee Brown being a part of the ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Trustee Withrow. That was very nice. So Trustee Brown, tag, you're it on the ad hoc committee to work with board officers and Dr. Benjamin.
Okay.
Happy to do it.
Great. So you will be hearing from Brenda very soon. We'll probably meet next week. Okay, so we're down to your homework point, but we're also at 6 o'clock, and that was the time we wanted to start the next section. So if we finish early, Trustee Bonilla, with what you want to do with the search work, we'll come back and work on the vision statement.
Okay.
Okay. So now we are, let me get to the right slide. We are at the search committee. You want to start us off, Trustee Bonilla here?
Oh, and so I just want to, so you all just seen, I want to recognize and I wanted to thank Acting Chancellor Walter for participating in the first portion of this committee. She has left the meeting, and she will probably just be viewing from the public for this portion of the next meeting, or this next section, sorry. So would you like me to give a bigger context for this, Dr. Benjamin, before you start?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I want to, one, recognize, honor, and thank Dr. Benjamin for agreeing to help us with the search. As I spoke to the trustees at our last closed session, I was going to be asking Dr. Benjamin for a formal proposal to work with us on the search committee for the search process for the interim. I want to remind the board that we don't have, as a board policy, a policy that governs the interim search process for a chancellor. What we have are permanent search, a board policy for permanent search, and we have a board policy for succession. And in that is where the process lies on direction for the board on how they are to appoint an interim. And then what Dr. Benjamin has done is she's looked at those two policies, your permanent search for a chancellor and your interim, and she's created what we believe, and she's going to share with you today, an abbreviated process that is relatively in line with how we would normally conduct our search for a permanent chancellor. This is a board search, meaning this is your search, our search, and we are going to be inviting others to participate in this interim chancellor search with us. I'm really excited that she's going to share. She has an amazing team who I got to meet a little bit earlier today. And so I will now turn this over to Dr. Benjamin.
Okay, thank you very much. We will start with you had all of these items in your packet today. And what you have a couple of things to decide tonight. One is the composition of the search committee, which is before you on the screen and also in your packet. And then you'll vote on this once you make your determination and begin the process. And then we'll move to the schedule that we've worked out so that you have someone, if everything goes as scheduled, in the seat as your interim chancellor on or near October 1st. So this composition comes from the process for chancellor. So we just use what you had there already for faculty, 3 classified, 2 administrators, 1 to 2 students, 1 to 3 community members. And there was not participation of board members, but we added that because in this search, because it's protracted, it's probably a good idea to have board members sitting in both places at that search level with the committee and at the level with of course, when you guys do the final. So now, Trustee Bonilla, you can lead the discussion around what you want the composition to be as a board, and then have the vote and we'll know.
Exactly. So for this portion here, again, we're going to create an ad hoc committee, a committee that is temporary in nature to participate on the full search committee. And we will be inviting all the rest of these constituencies to participate with us. We'll ask them to join in. There's a particular way that Dr. Benjamin will interface with our HR to get administrative support to ensure that she has the appropriate staffing in order to bring on all the various constituencies. But I would like, and I think it's important for us to have an ad hoc committee join the board officers. So again, inviting one other trustee to participate. This is going to be a time-consuming process. We know that there is a hefty schedule before you that we're going to review. And so if you're interested in participating on the ad hoc committee for this interim search, now's a good time to let me know. Trustee Withrow, thank you. You're the only person I can see. There could be others.
I don't need to, but I'm willing.
Sorry.
Trustee Gonzalez,
Okay.
hand raised as well.
I'm happy to define.
Thank you. And I'd really like to go with the desire of the entire board on ensuring that we have full trust and full confidence in the ad hoc committee. So I am open to your suggestions. We have Trustee Withrow and we have Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan. Any other thoughts?
You know, given that we have the board officers, I'm happy to withdraw. And Bill, if you have time and the inclination, I'm happy to support your participation in that.
Thank you. I can have a stage where I can set my own schedule. So yes, I'm willing to commit the time. It's very important.
Okay. Well, I believe that we have identified our ad hoc committee. Thank you for stepping forward, Trustee Withrow. And do we have that set up as an action item?
You do, but would you decide whether you want 1 or 2 students or 1, 2, or 3 community members? And you might want to talk about how you'll select those.
Right.
I think that if we don't have students on there, we're going to get in trouble. The students are going to be very upset about not being included.
Oh, no, they have to be. The question is
No, but
whether
I'm
you have
looking
to.
here, but okay, so you say 1 to 2.
Yeah,
But
how many?
I think since the chancellor greatly impacts what happens educationally, we should have at least as many students as we have faculty and administrate. I mean, you've got 4 faculty, and then you have 9 faculty classified administrators, and then you have 1 to 2 students. I don't think that's a really good ratio, nor the community as well input. So I think you should have the maximum number invited of community and students.
I just want to say these are just recommendations. So that, yeah, for you guys decide.
Right. And I think what we've done in the past is for trustees have typically emailed in names, contact information for individuals who are either students or community members. But one of the things that happens is, you know, this is a time sensitive and a commitment, and that once we identify all of the different constituencies, they must attend from beginning to end. Any person who misses any of the process, unfortunately, drops out of the entire process because it's an issue of integrity to the process. So what we've done in the past is we've reached out to various constituencies, students, and community members to ensure that they are, 1, interested in participating, and then we send that information forward to the board clerk. And that's the recommendation that I would make, that if you have students and or community members who are interested, reach out to them, ensure that they understand the level of commitment, and then move that information forward, complete with name, title, email to the board clerk. And we would have to do this likely before the end of this week. So if there's agreement, Trustee Handy?
Yes, I think that looking at the schedule, which is quite extensive, if by any chance that we actually come out of this COVID, I think that to ensure that continuity, that Zoom should be made available to all of the participants. I mean, right now you can pretty much say people are home or whatever, but if that changes for any reason, especially with students being where they are and community members, that as long as the meetings are on Zoom, I think you don't run that risk of someone having to miss and then being dropped out of the process. It's just my suggestion.
That's true.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all planned for Zoom. So how many students and how many community members? Or do you want any of the other numbers to change as well? It's fine, whatever, it's your process.
We have Trustee hand raised as well.
I feel we need 3 community members, especially with what's going on and the word that's gotten out relative to our accreditation and that sort of thing. I think it's an opportunity to build a relationship with community leaders. Question along that time, you talk about an extensive community time commitment for these community leaders. What are we actually talking about when we start talking to them?
We'll go through the schedule. It's all on there. We'll show you in a minute.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Thanks.
Trustee Weinstein, your hand is raised.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I miss?
Yeah, if we're gonna not go by hands, then let's go by I won't put my hand up anymore. So, because it's extremely irritating to put your hand up and then other people speak. So I would appreciate one way or the other. I was going to ask what Trustee Withrow basically asked, which is when we're thinking about our community members, how many hours are we talking about?
We'll go through it in a minute. Once we get the composition, it's all in the schedule.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I pass.
I'm sorry, I had to move off of the call for a few seconds, so I missed.
Trustee
I missed a
Withrow
couple of seconds.
recommended 3 community members in light of all the things happening with the college now in the news and what have you.
I agree. I think we should maximize both the community and the students. And again, this is going to be dependent on the number of recommendations that we make and whether or not they're going to be able to commit to the time frame. But I think that's, I agree with that. Trustee Gonzalez?
Do we still have a functioning district-wide Peralta student governance body? And if so, I don't know whether we've got a process figured out for how students choose their representatives, but I would, like Linda, I would definitely advocate for the maximum number of students, fully realizing that the bigger it gets, the more unwieldy it gets. But I would have said 2 to 3 students here, and if the number is 2, I would say 2. But I would have recommended a higher number of students. We've got 4 colleges. I don't want people feeling like their institution was left out, their constituency was left out. I think that voice is very important.
Well, we just put that because that's what's in the other policy, but whatever number you choose, yes. Again, it's.
Well, I would put 3 as with this number.
And I just want to make sure, Dr. Benjamin, that the number that we're putting up, if we're unable to achieve a particular number, I want to make sure that we're still moving forward. This is why I like the range, right? So the range was fine. We want to have the maximum number. If the maximum is 3, that's fine. But if we only get 1 student who's able to commit through the whole process, then that's where we're at.
Do you have a student trustee, right?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
No, we do not.
Oh.
We do not.
We had our. When do our 2 student trustees come back on?
So we did not have anyone that applied and who for student trustee for the positions. So I think we're looking for fall. And my understanding is because of COVID and everything that's been going on is CCLC has let me know that several districts are in this position.
So, but you have your student organizations at the colleges. Are they still functional? Your associated student organizations? Yeah.
Yes, they are.
So that may be an opportunity, a way to get some through that. And each one of them has student body presidents, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have 4.
Yeah.
8.
So if there's a way to staff district committees. Am I assuming incorrectly there? If you needed students for district commit, how do you get students for your district committees? This would be a district committee.
Students.
Yeah, you go to them. So that whoever's over student services, I would think, would know what the process is. So you raised all the numbers, and so you left the administrators at 2. You gonna leave that?
Is there such thing as having a selection committee that's too big?
We'll deal with whatever you give us. And I think there is such a thing, but this is a manageable number.
Okay, I'm comfortable with where we're at.
Dr. Benjamin, we have one more person in the queue.
Are we doing hands or not?
Brenda?
Yes, Trustee Handy.
I'm raising my hand, I'm waving at the screen. I don't know what else I can do.
I'm sorry.
Okay. My question is, for the faculty members, 4, is that guaranteeing, is that because there will be one from each college? Why is that number higher than any other constituency group? So I'm just trying to look for the reasoning behind that.
Because I just went straight to your policy for hiring the chancellor, and that was the number that was there. All the numbers that were in here were the numbers that were in the policy for hiring the chancellor. And you want they get to choose who their participants are. And you want your bargaining units represented, I'm assuming, in classified senates and faculty senates and students.
So you're saying, so are you saying one of each constitutes 4? Or, I mean, then saying faculty, that doesn't really say faculty. To me, it's faculty, I think of those actually in the class. We were talking about faculty leadership, faculty representative.
It looks like the way it works here is that you would notify, I didn't look at your governance policy, but typically they say the academic senate appoints or makes committee appointments. And the academic senate then makes a determination, and typically they'll choose somebody, have the bargaining unit choose somebody. They can do our colleges. It's whatever way they decide, and I would not want to tell them how to choose their faculty members.
Nor do I. I'm just trying to find out I'm trying to find out, 1, what that number represented, and then 2, has someone who is a faculty member but not in a leadership role have the opportunity to request to be on that committee? If they, I mean, we have more people who are just faculty than we do that are actually involved in some of these roles. So do they have the opportunity? That's what I'm trying to understand, is if someone...
But they have their own mechanisms for choosing their representatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes they ask people to volunteer, or they have, and typically it's a written process on how people can volunteer. And if they get more volunteers, then they have some way of choosing who gets to participate, but they have their own way of determining who participates.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and there are a couple of faculty members on the board, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's, in my experience, how that works.
Yeah, I'll affirm that that's what I can also happen. In terms of...
We have,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, we have Trustee Weinstein in the queue.
Thank you. I would just say for the students that I would encourage 4, 1 from each college. And I don't know how many people will drop out. We don't know, but I think 1 from each college would be fairer. That's it.
Are there objections to that suggestion?
No. No. Just a reminder, we do have one speaker in the public comment.
Okay.
Could we, can we finish this piece here before we, are we satisfied with search committee composition?
Yeah.
And if so, then it looks like we have a unanimous vote on this, or a unanimous position or board direction if we're not taking a formal vote.
I think we had, Brenda's it an action item?
Yes, it is an action item, so we should take
Okay.
a vote.
Let's go ahead and do roll call. Thank you. Well, can I have a motion to approve first?
So moved.
And a second? With the second, and we'll go ahead and take roll call.
Thank you. Trustee Withrow?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Brown?
Did you, I thought you were saying Trustee Brown, but I'm just lip reading.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
You actually cut out a little, Trustee Brown. Could you repeat? What
Yeah, it's the internet's cutting out. Can you tell me again, were we going to get one student from each college like Trustee Weinstein had suggested?
Yes.
My,
I think so.
I think that's the goal.
Okay, yes.
thank you. Trustee Handy?
Yes.
Thank you. We actually have Natasha Sani. Before I finish the vote, Natasha, is this something that has to do with the vote?
Yes, I just wanted to recommend that the board should hear public comment prior to voting on any item.
Thank you.
And just sorry to add to that, Brenda, you can ask the public speaker if the comment is related to this item, and if it's not, then it's perfectly appropriate for it to wait till after the vote.
Thank you. So if there are any public speakers in the attendee list that would like to make comment prior to this vote, if you can please raise your hand. Otherwise, I can continue with the vote. Seeing that there are no hands raised, I will continue with the vote. So Trustee Handy?
She voted already.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen?
Yes, and I'm just, the one worry that I have in doing this is that we haven't determined how various constituent groups will be, or participants from various constituent groups will be selected. I'm assuming that we're going to sort of default to board policy 2431 on chancellor selection, and as closely as possible follow that. I'm looking at it and I can't see how it is that student representation is meant to be selected, but to the extent that we can, in fact, defer to the student government leadership itself in this process, I think that would be great. And so my vote is yes.
Thank you. And Trustee Weinstein?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Napoli-Abella Reese did cast her vote in the chat. She did have to step away for just a moment, so her vote is a yes. Trustee Bonilla?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, can we go ahead and have the public speakers come forward?
Thank you. The public speaker that we have is Ms. Jennifer Shanoski, and I will unmute her now.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to let me speak I apologize I wasn't here earlier. I was joining our brothers and sisters in the Oakland Education Association on a caravan demanding for safe, healthy, equitable opening of public schools. So I want to give a quick shout out to the nationwide day of action that's focused on that. I was going to focus my public comments today on the chancellor's search and to commend the board for doing such a robust job of trying to follow our policies and procedures in looking for both our interim and our permanent chancellor. But I'd also, after listening to the retreat, which has been really enlightening, I also want to add just a couple of items. We really appreciate the Peralta Federation of Teachers, the faculty in Peralta. We really appreciate that this board has been so open to public comment and to the various constituency groups that they represent. And we're really committed to ensuring that this district retains its democratically elected board and local control all the way through. And I've said this before, and I'm gonna dare to say it again. We may not always agree, but faculty in this district are here for the long haul. We serve students every single day in the classroom, in counseling offices, in the libraries, and in nursing offices. And we support those students through thick and thin, including during this COVID-19 crisis. So to hear some board members speaking disparagingly about faculty from their positions of power is really disheartening as we get ready to do something unprecedented, which is serve our students remotely and try and support them as best we can in the coming weeks. So I hope that we'll all try to work together to overcome our differences and to really be a unit that really supports student success through and through. So thank you so much and have a great night.
Are those all, is that the only public speaker?
Yes, President Bonilla, that was the last of the public speaking list.
Thank you. I will turn this back over to our facilitator, Dr. Benjamin. Oh, you're still on, you're unmute.
Thank you so much for approving the committee. We will begin immediately getting in touch with HR so they can contact these individuals to get the names. And then Trustee Bonilla, I'm assuming that you will do whatever you need to do to get the names of the community members. So I ask Brenda now to put up the search schedule so we can look at it quickly and see what, among other things, the commitment is, the time commitment. Okay, so this is a pretty rigorous schedule. I think it's pretty tight. It's already started. We're in process. If you will note, every segment of this is highlighted in blue is where you as a board are involved. And so the first one you see is August 3rd. That's today. And you're doing the things that are listed there. We're in that process right now. And would you scroll it down, please, to August 26th or 27th? There's another blue highlighted. We will need to have a special meeting on that day. You see the blue, August 26th or 27th, for approval. So between now and then, we'll be working on the position description with the search committee. We took into account that faculty do not return until the 20th. And so we had to wait, you know, until they're back and officially involved in their jobs, and so they can participate actively in this. So we'll have the position description completed for your review on August 26th or 27th. And if we could decide that date right now, that would be great. And it will take, I'm thinking, no more than, I don't know if we need a closed session that night, but for approval of the job description and announcement, I'm sorry, the position description and announcement, and you get to review that, make whatever changes you'd like to it. I'm thinking no more than 90 minutes. And that, yeah, but because there are 7 of you, maybe quite a bit of discussion, but which date works, which works better, 26th or 27th, and then the time for that. And I'm thinking it has to be after, at 4 or later.
Okay. So I think what we should do is just canvass each of the board members for their preference on the 26th or the 27th, knowing that we would start likely at 4 p.m. and that we'd go at least 90 minutes. Board clerk, can I just have you kind of just do a straw poll here on what the preferential date is?
Thank you. So I will just go by roll call. So we'll start with Trustee Withrow.
I can meet either of those dates.
I'm sorry, you said neither of those days work?
I can make either of them.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Either date's fine.
Sorry, I have to clean my ears.
Either date is fine for me.
Thank you. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, just so you said the 26th or the 27th. Let's see, either is, say that again?
And it's at 4 p.m. for both of them, beginning at 4.
4 p.m. Either day is fine.
Thank you. We'll move to Trustee Handy.
Sorry, what is the ask again?
So we're asking what date would work best as far as our next date for the committee search, the 26th or the 27th?
For the committee search.
To review the position announcement and for you to approve it, the whole position description and announcement. It shouldn't be more than 90 minutes.
So the 26th, the 27th is not going to work for me.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez, you won?
Sorry, can you come back to me? I'm just trying to look at my calendar and make some sense of this.
Sure. We'll go to Trustee Weinstein.
Either one works, either.
Thank you. Trustee Napoli Bella Reese.
No preference.
Thank you. Both work. Trustee Bonilla.
I'm open, whatever works for the whole group.
So Trustee Gonzalez Yuen.
Okay, and the time again that you're talking about?
It'll start at 4 p.m. It should take no more than 90 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry, either of those days, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so based on the poll, it looks like we'll identify August 26th as a date.
4 o'clock.
At 4 o'clock. And
Okay.
I will send out a Zoom link after this retreat to everyone.
Thank you. Okay, can you put the schedule back up, please?
Yes.
All right, and then if we keep going down to the next set of blue, September, there'll be a lot going on in between the Blue and Applications Committees. And then on September 22nd or 23rd are the 2 days we've set aside for you as a board to review or interview rather the final candidates. So we need you to block both of those days. We don't know how many we'll have. Interview would probably be about 75 minutes at the most. So do those days work for you? Can you make those days work?
A heads up that that's also our agenda review. So I'm sure that will show up in the calendar as you schedule, but.
Okay. What time is the agenda review?
4 to 6.
Oh, okay. So 2 of you will be there already. Any objections to those dates? And then on your board meeting day, if all has gone well, we will have a contract, and the contract will get approved in your meeting, which is already on your calendar for September 29th.
I believe the 24th is our flex day at Foothill De Anza. And so if it's an evening meeting, that works, or an end of the day meeting. But if it's a daytime meeting, I have Thursday the 24th, I believe, is our flex day at Foothill De Anza.
Is that September?
Yeah, we're on quarters, and so we go way late.
Well, we don't need you on September 24th. We need you on the 22nd and 23rd. So,
I'm sorry.
Nikki, aren't you on sabbatical?
23rd. That's done.
Your sabbatical's
if
over?
I could extend sabbatical another year, I'd be happy to do that. But they just gave me a year.
It's been a year already?
It was a fast year now.
Wow.
We're having so much fun, you know, these things just go by.
Okay.
So 22, 23, that's the date we're talking about then. Sorry.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I'm not quite getting it. Yes, those work just fine. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you very much. That was easy. Now, if we go back to the top of the schedule and look at all of the kind of tan colored ones, those are the dates that people on the committee would need to be available. Those of you who asked that question, if you're thinking about people, these are the dates you'll give them. August 26th from 1 to 5, there's a search committee meeting, there's orientation and search planning. So we'll need them 4 hours that afternoon. And then again on September 16th, and then on the 17th through the 18th, first level interviews, depending on how many candidates we have. So on the 16th, we need them, and 17th and 18th. We don't know how much of that time, but they need to reserve both of those days. And then would you scroll down a bit more, Brenda, please? And then at the end of the process, we're not sure which day, the board president will meet with the committee. We'll do just a complete circle here to get back to them, for the board president to let them know the final decision that the board has made and to thank them for their service and that kind of thing. That one is not necessarily required, but those are the dates that they would need to be engaged. So are there any questions?
And just to clear, the numbers in the search composition are ideal numbers, but if we don't make those numbers from all of the different constituency groups, we still go forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if we go back to the top, I want to talk to you about one other aspect of the search. So in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the institutional priorities, which would be those things that you want the president to accomplish. And that's going to go into that position announcement, because we want to be really clear with the people we're interviewing. We do a lot of hands-on work in trying to find people to participate in the process. And so we're going to do a survey, and we want a transparent process. We want input all of the employees. So we're going to develop a survey based on the characteristics you decide on tonight and on the institutional priorities, to get input from them, to give opportunity rather for all of your employees to have input into that process. And that survey will go out probably this week. We're shooting for the 7th. We'll see, depends on where we get tonight. So with that in mind, and not much time left. We're going to go now to the institutional priorities. So, Brenda, I will try to get my screen back up. Okay, do you see my screen? All right, so now
Yeah.
you have to think about, and I think we can do this pretty quickly because I'm gonna go back up to your goals, because those are the things you want to accomplish this year. So when we recruit candidates, we want to be able to say, these are the things the board wants you to get done this year. So if you can just give me some idea, we can fashion that into statements that are priorities. So those are the areas that you chose. And so if each one of you would think of something you think would be a priority, what is imperative for the person you hired to accomplish this year? And we can take you in alpha order, or you can do the popcorn technique and just start talking. What would you like the person to accomplish?
Go ahead, Trustee Withrow. Looks like you're ready.
I'm sorry, I thought I was listening, but I missed what we're being called upon to do. I saw the ones that have were the most selected in terms of priorities, but what do you want me to say?
I want you to say what it is you want the person who gets this job as your interim chancellor starting October to accomplish in this coming year.
Well, first of all, get us through in an organized fashion. Get us through in an organized fashion in spite of the COVID-19, so that we're taking care of the students that are, as far as I can see, hear, and sense, quite traumatized. To me, I think that's the biggest one. That's number one. Number two, though, the accreditation issues follow right after. So this interim chancellor is going to have a big responsibility to make sure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's and meet whatever's necessary to get us past this probationary process that we're in right now. That's all. That's enough.
I'm sorry, Trustee Brown is in the queue.
Yeah. So what we've realized with COVID-19 and the online learning is that the students that we serve, the population that we serve, has some impacts from lack of investment in their communities, in our communities, and there has been a greater difficulty with learning, dealing with this pandemic, greater pressure on our students. So we still have this desire, this call to action, this focus on having equity and dismantling structural racism, and so that we can actually deliver the education to our students, the educational services to our students in a way that is more supportive of them. It's a system-wide change that needs to be made, but I think at Peralta, we also need to have a chancellor that will focus on making sure that we put the students at the forefront of our thoughts in the delivery of the education, and manifest that by helping us come up with internal processes to address the equity gaps that we have here at Peralta. We still have problems with the implementation of 705. We still have an equity gap for Black and Brown students. And that would also include our Southeast Asian students and our students that are South Pacific Islander. So I think that if we're able to get a chancellor that could really speak to the needs of the students in terms of helping us develop processes that will close the equity gap, that would be paramount, so that we could improve the way that we fulfill our mission.
Okay, whoever's next.
I'll just go through, I'll go to Trustee Gonzalez.
Thanks. I think I would come back around to this COVID thing. It's obviously critical, but how do we do that? I think that's sort of the question. And for me, it always comes back to the staff relations and the HR. The way we deliver education, the way we deliver services is through staff. If we don't have the highest morale and the best training and the best support for faculty and staff, then we can't deliver on any of that. And the number two thing that I would say is we've put in place some really important financial reforms, and we've got some things that we need to do. We need to double back down on that and make sure that we are doing all of the fiscal reforms that we started, and then finish up on those. Institutionalize those in some critical ways. If we don't do that, we're right back to square one. So I think that's critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Weinstein.
Thank you.
I do have a question on that. No, I can ask a question later. I remember I wanted to ask, where are these reforms, and you're thinking about in the FICMAC report and other places where you receive recommendations?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And and there are others that are going to come up.
Yes.
But we have an enumerated list that we need to deal with. And we've got our OPEB issues that we've solved for the moment, but we need to double back down on that. So again, I think it's the staff relations and HR support of faculty and staff in doing all of this stuff, and they're coming back around on the issues of morale, et cetera, training, support, and then the fiscal stuff. Thank you.
Trustee Handy. Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Weinstein. You were already in the queue.
Yeah. So number one for me would be COVID. And when we're talking about taking care of student educational and other needs, I just want to make sure that we put in there what's going on now, which is the food and the housing insecurity, which is probably worse now than it was before. So the other needs, in addition, which I know the colleges are working on, but I think those are important, as well as mental health, which is very important. I think that it'd be nice if the chancellor and everybody else could make sure that communication happens and transparency, because that's a really big area where everybody is very sensitive about when communication does not happen from one group to another. Somehow try to find a way so that communication is regular, and the different groups know about what's going on at the right time, at the beginning. And I think the interim, I would hope the interim would be happy to be here and would show excitement about the amazing college programs that we have and the amazing students that we have and faculty. I think we need somebody who's going to have very positive attitude and shows that, just like people are now excited about Last Chance U, where everybody is like watching it and it's pretty exciting. But I do think the next chancellor has to have some positivity that she or he is bringing with themselves. So that's it.
Trustee Reese?
And programs.
So I have a list of items here. Somebody who's got a great financial eye, and somebody that understands that we are the stewards of public money. Therefore, we must openly, with accountability and transparency, document what we do with these monies. Somebody who has the ability to communicate and really build relationships with students, internal and external communities, each individual board member or board members. Somebody who is greatly experienced in supporting or building strong infrastructures, systems within colleges and particularly a district. So somebody who's got multi-college experience would be great. And somebody who leads and motivates by example. And someone who, and this one, I don't know if this is really for the interim or more for the permanent, but in my mind, I imagine somebody who empowers and trains and recognizes each person within the district so they feel respected and important, because that's all a part of leadership, right?
Thank you.
Trustee Handy?
I think that the interim person, and we're talking about priorities for the interim, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I said for the interim person, I think we're going to have maybe a greater success with that than the long-term chancellor, in light of the last 2 or 3 chancellors here. It's great to say all of these things that we want, but what we really, I think, are going to have to focus on is one, hold on a minute, is COVID. The repercussions of COVID is going to be the priority, because the longer this goes on, the more we're going to have to take a look at what community college looks like. What have we been able to accomplish so far? Do we have students? Are we continuing to educate? So that person is going to have to be looking at where we are and how we're going to survive during this time of COVID, and what the immediate needs are going to be to get our students through this. So there's going to be a lot of housekeeping and changes that are going to have to be made as we adjust to this new normal. So I think it's important that we don't rush and get anyone but someone who has previously been a chancellor so they can hit the ground running. Personalities, I really don't care about that. I need somebody who knows what they're doing and can come in and do the job. I think it's going to be very important that that person is able to to help with community relations and advocacy, because we're losing students. And the only way we're going to be able to get those numbers back up is through the people who empower these students, the different groups who help to encourage students to come to us in the first place, the churches, the families. Many students, many ethnic groups do not work well independently. They work better in a group situation, especially Black and brown students. So there's some students who have built their momentum to come to us, but won't be returning, who are not taking courses online. There are also students who had disabilities, who have had to drop their classes because they were not classes that lent themselves to being online. So those are things that we're going to need a commitment and a relationship with our community. The district climate, we cannot pretend that the elephant is not in the room. We have done nothing to dispel the allegations or the statements. The chancellor printed her truth, and it's out there everywhere. This is going to impact the willingness of anyone else who's going to want to come here. But if we don't get a climate survey we need to know what our faculty members are saying, what our administrators are saying, what our students are saying. We have to have the truth, and not doing these climate statements is burying the truth. But the numbers don't stay buried. So I think that that is that's something that has to be looked at immediately so that we can do better and get our students here. The educational quality that is different than what we experienced before COVID. They're going to need to be able to assess how we're doing again. And we're going to have willingness to make some changes, again, to fit our new normal so that we can continue to support those students that want to be supported. I have no question that anyone who has the experience to step in as an interim chancellor doesn't already have experience with accreditation and all of the other things that we need to keep this campus going. But those are some of the things that really come into mind first. All the things that we would say normally in an interim search, they don't really apply here because we're not normal right now. So these are some of the qualities that I think that we really need to be looking, or some of the assets that someone brings that we really need to be looking at. So because that person may be with us much longer, if we're lucky, short, but more than likely, because of COVID and everything else that's going on, this interim may be with us for quite some time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good list, everybody. Who's left?
Me.
Julina, yes.
I would just like to, I'll be very brief, echo all of what was already said. But I think just to add a little of context to some of the pieces here is we want someone, and I think you heard this, proven track record in addressing, not with the COVID-19, we already know there's no proven track record anywhere on there, but all of the other pieces have to have a proven track record of all of the details that we have just seen in executing and being a successful CEO at a multi-district campus or a multi-district college district. I think that's critical. On the building relationships I seen it mentioned earlier here, which is the community piece. We often leave out industry. We often mention community partners, but Peralta is a premier training institution that needs to have its premier partnerships with the industries that are local to us. And so we need to have a strong business community roundtable that is convened by Peralta. I often participate in many roundtable discussions throughout the city of Oakland. And unfortunately, Peralta is not at the table, and it's not the same thing having a trustee there. So we need institutional participation across all of our different business partners and community partners as well.
Okay, it's a good list. Did anybody think of anything else as you listen to others? And this list kind of goes into what we were going to discuss next about the qualities, and I think this gets us there, but this is an excellent list. Thank you very much. We are 1 minute away from adjourning. I would like for you to send your homework to me. I'm assuming you did it. I know it was a lot of fun. For you to send that homework to me, and we can do that later. That may take a little more time, maybe if you have another retreat, but it's really important. At least you had a chance to think about what you think the district, not the district, but your board, your individual board should look like if it were functioning at a very, very high level. So we're at the end of our time. I'm going to just stop right here and turn it back over to you. And please email those to me tonight. I'm gonna bug you until you complete it, so.
Before we adjourn, I just want to go over and make sure, did we have two other items, 2.2 on the schedule that we needed to take a vote on, and then the institutional priorities and quality that we just finished?
Right. The schedule, yes, you need to. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's go ahead and can I have a motion to approve both 2.2, the discussion for the schedule, and the institutional priorities, which is 2.3?
So moved.
Motion to approve. Second?
Second.
And we have a second, and we can do roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Withrow?
Yes.
Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Handy?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan?
Yep.
Trustee Weinstein?
Yes.
Trustee Napoli Abella Reese?
Yes.
And Trustee Bonilla?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Before I adjourn, can we all just give Dr. Helen Benjamin one great big applause?
Thank
You
you.
applause.
Thank
You did a
you.
great job.
This was
Thank you
amazing.
so much. Thank you. And those
Okay,
on the
we will all-
committee will hear from you. I'm done.
we will all be in touch very soon, and I'll follow up with the board clerk on getting communications out to you. And so talk to you all soon.
Thank you
Okay,
all.
Meeting's adjourned.
Good night.
Night. Good night.
Thank you, Jelena.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.